Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is July 1, 2022. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Benedikt Brydern. Is that correct, Benedikt?
That's perfect. Thank you, Gary. Thanks for having
All
me.
right. And actually, my name is Jerry.
Whoa, here we go. Already
I
C
forgot to
minus.
tell you.
Thumbs down. All right,
Yeah,
Gary.
I forgot to tell you. That's all right. No big deal. But I'm going to call you Benny. And the first question, Benny, is what is the best thing for a human being?
I would say air.
Air is a good answer.
But then, right after this, I put music, but that's my personal opinion.
I like that. That's pretty dang good. I like both of those. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Wow, that's a tough one. There's so many sources, right?
Yeah.
Maybe intuition, right? That has to do with it.
Wow. Intuition is a great answer because we don't usually think of intuition as a form coming in. It's more like how you deal with information is you use your intuition, but intuition is coming into us. Very good. Benny, why do you think humans collect or gather information?
I think it's curiosity.
Yeah. Is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented?
Well, that's also, I think it grew over the centuries, right? I think the curiosity leads to maybe investigation, other things. So, and then of course you foster it, and then we got, the newspapers and we got other mediums nowadays. So I think it grew.
Yeah,
So invented partially, absolutely.
I like that. Do thoughts create emotions?
Wow. Yeah, that's a tough one. If I now think about it, because I know your body for sure does, right? And must be because you think about something and you feel bad or you feel great. So I would say yes on that.
Yeah. Fill in the blank, Benny. I don't I don't know what I think until I
Well, until I think it, right? I mean, you,
Yeah,
you think when you think it, right? I don't know.
no,
I
that's
mean,
fine. I don't know what I think until I think it because like McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. And Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it. So it's an endless
mhm.
loop indeed. Can humans think without language?
I would say no, because you need to understand it yourself first when you
Yeah.
think something, and it needs to be in a language, whatever language it is, right?
Yeah. Your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
I think we are split in the middle, but for every
Yeah,
person, it goes either this way or that way. But maybe the perfect human had it in the middle balance.
good. Chomsky says that language is not just words, it's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work, when language breaks down?
I play music, that helps. But but I know what you mean. I think we also create new words, right? Or you rephrase it, or you try to inject something in your language with something else. And we've seen that, with new mashups and new things we try to put in to make ourselves heard better.
I like that. I love your word rephrase and I love mashup. These are two questions Alan Turing asked in 1950. The first one is thinking a function of the soul?
I think the soul is later, something else. I think the brain is separate.
Yeah.
maybe feeds to it, or but yeah, I think it's not.
The second Turing question is, can machines think?
They do, but we make them think, right? I don't know if
Yeah.
they think independently might have been the word to add, but in itself, the machine, I think, doesn't, you know.
Well, that's what I like, Benny. You get it, because I'm for you challenging or rewording the question, and you added the question independently. See, that flushes it out better, because just because I chose these words doesn't mean these are the ideal way to word my question. So I really appreciate it when people feel like they can. That my favorite was a couple months ago when a couple of these more questions, is it more this or more that? This woman said, the word more doesn't function in your question.
Nice. Yes.
And
Here we
I'm
are.
like,
Yeah.
I'm all for that. I understand.
Well, that's philosophy, right? Those guys have
Yeah,
been rewording and rephrasing for centuries to come to a closer solution and
that's
results.
it. And here's another one. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I think it goes together, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes we shift the wrong way, maybe, and we think it's going to do it, and maybe it's not. It's a wrong happiness or it's a fake one. But yeah, it's together.
cool. And again, another more is, does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we actually creating it?
Also, I would say both,
Yeah.
right? It just can't. It can't be just one answer here.
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
that's fine. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
thought.
Dude, there's no right or wrong answers to any of these.
I know, but I
Well,
think maybe in the
what,
big sense of the universe, I don't know. Light is very physics and things, and there might be something faster than light we haven't discovered yet. But
yeah.
thought is pretty damn fast. So.
But that's what just to finish, I was going to say there's no right or wrong answers, Benny, but that one you got right.
Good.
No, I love it when people say speed of thought is faster, but we don't know. But I'm what I'm after here is your hunch, your guess, and
Hmm.
back to the word you started with, your intuition.
Right.
It's more like your intuition. So great. So you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. That's what Audre Lorde, the poet, said. And her comrade Yvonne Rainer said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Wow. That is deep. So I think you discover those tools, right? I mean, you might not know them. I don't know. I mean, you just, might use your tools. You've learned to dismantle things, but then maybe it doesn't work, right? So, I mean, you got to get the chisel out if the scissors don't do it, or you discover, or you make your own new tool.
That's good. I love that newness. What new toy do you suggest?
I think we've got plenty of toys at this point. I don't know if we need a new one, right? I mean, use the old ones first efficiently.
That's good. I like your sense of efficient. I love that word efficient. Um, what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Um, Not waking up? No, not really. But maybe that's something we could worry about. But actually, no. It's been so far. It's been smooth. Nothing
Good.
really to worry about. So
That's beautiful. Marshall McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound, the poet, that artists are the antenna of the race. And by artists, I mean musicians, painters, poets. What artists are doing, Pound taught McLuhan, is they're broadcasting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so that we can learn to cope with what we don't like about the inventions. So, Benny, I asked you the question McLuhan probed for his whole career is, why do we humans ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
yeah, maybe we don't even we. I don't know if we ignore is the right word. but maybe we just don't see them because there are a lot of distractions out, right?
Yeah.
And so it might be right in front of us, but you're focusing on the other side, so you don't even see it. And the artist also puts it out there, but because you're so sidetracked, or you don't, either you don't want to see it, there's denial, or you just don't see it, right? And you have your eye on something completely different, and you don't see behind that wall.
Denial and distraction. Very good. I like that. It's like we call it in the Wizard of Oz, the Wizard of Us, and the artists are the atomic dogs like Toto pulling the curtain away so we can see what's behind. But sometimes we're so distracted we don't even see that the artists are pulling the curtain back.
No, you look at the curtain and you wonder about that one.
That's it. You look at the curtain. Do artists have moral obligation?
I think so, because as you said, you uncover something, right? And there's something behind it, a truth, right? So you better get it right and tell the right story, and don't show some lies to the world. So I think there's an obligation.
I like that word true. Louis Buñuel, the filmmaker, said, "I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it."
Yeah,
Any
good one.
comment on that?
Well, also because there's yourself involved, your ego, and sometimes you think you've got it, or this is the way, and you want to shove it into people's, consciousness, and it might be completely wrong. It's your truth, right? Even for artists, we are not exempt from errors, So
Really good point. The great journalist I.F. Stone said, "The truth as I see it." It's still,
nice.
but that question also begs this other one is they say the journey is more important than the destination. Then why do we have to seek or name a destination if the journey's more important?
Yeah, we shouldn't, right? If you go by the Zen, it's still the journey. Whatever destination is going to be, you might go right or left or whatever. But maybe it's something human that we love to have a goal, right? You want to
Yeah,
get the fire started in the cave, and that's your goal. But just to get to the fire is a big journey before you get it going.
it's good. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
It's also a balance, because the old ones that were good, or but they haunt you, right? They follow you. And same with successful artists, that's the past is always there because they discover something. So but I love new ideas, and sometimes, yeah, you're afraid, but also I'm very excited. It goes both
Yes,
ways.
that takes courage. Benny, can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Yeah, that's really tough, because talking with my mother about early childhood events, and we tried to go back together, and she said, "Do you remember when you looked at your dad when you was 2?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't really recall that." So I would say maybe when I was 5 or 6 in school, I played violin for all the teachers. But I don't recall, being at the zoo at age 4, seeing a llama the first time, which my mom said he was so impressed by the llama or whatever. So I think
Wow.
maybe around 5 or 6 years old, there are a couple of memories I think that they did happen.
Yeah. That's really good because you understood the verb conjure because so many people go, "Well, I don't have it, but my parents told me," or a photograph or something like that. But we're going to get back to music just a few more. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Mm, depends how you use it, right?
Yeah.
It's both.
Yep.
And so you can abuse your memory, and you can also cherish it. And, it gives you both sides, the positive and the negative.
Yep. Tell me someone within your immediate family and then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
I say definitely my violin teacher. And so, that's like outside of my family. And because here's a different person you don't know yet, and is teaching you an instrument, and also is teaching you about discipline, the life, and all those kind of things, right? So both my three violin teachers, they all made major impacts on not just playing violin, right? I mean, that's the obvious, but also on living philosophy and how to deal with all kind of things, right? So it transcended to life. So that's like outside of the family. And I would say within the family, because I'm a single child, so no siblings who could, do something, I would say is my mother, definitely.
What did you mainly get from your mom, you think?
Uh, well, it's the upbringing, right? It's dealing with things, also dealing with people on a daily basis, because that's your mom, it's your house, you're there all the time. So you learn about that, right? Social interaction. I mean, it's your mother, but still, that's I think what really it comes down to, you know, responding, reacting, answering, suggesting, yeah, standing up for or against your mother, all that. So I think that is family.
That's beautiful. I rarely get that sort of sense, just social interaction. But, Alice Walker says an interesting thing, and I'm curious your reaction to it. Yes, mother, I can see you are flawed. You have not hidden it. That is your greatest gift to me.
Wow.
Does that
Wow.
resonate with you at all, or any thoughts on that?
I don't know. I mean, when I was young, you don't really see those things. Yeah, later now. Once you get older, then again, your memory, you look back and oh, that's what she meant, or this is what
Yeah,
happened. Then you have a better understanding, but not in the moment when I think it depends on the where you're standing in life, in your
right.
consciousness.
Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Not really. In Germany, there are pretty much only two, right? So there is Protestant, Lutheran, or Catholic. At least when I grew up back in the 70s. So and this, in the schools they just put you there. But my mom, my family itself is Lutheran, and I think that's what she raised me at. But it's all about the same: is respect your others, help your neighbors, all those kind of things, basic values. But
Really?
she didn't push it. I could have said, "Mom, this sounds funky. I don't want to believe this. I don't know what you're telling me." I could have gone somewhere else. I'm sure she's very open.
Beautiful. Do you pray?
Not particularly on a regular basis like many other people do, and that's great. I don't. I meditate occasionally, and that also comes and goes, right? And I feel like playing music all often turns into a meditation and a prayer in its own right? But
Yeah.
I don't really have my own altar or area of worship, or I don't feel the need for that.
If God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Um, well, welcome wherever we're gonna be, right? Hopefully, it says that.
I love that word welcome. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I think they are used as a vehicle because when you come on this planet, I think nobody is evil.
Yeah.
You get shaped, and for many many sources, right? So, and that's what you can see with babies, and of course how humans develop, and I think it starts right there. So
Yeah. The great verb shape. So, this is sort of a follow up. How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up with a few modern thinkers' thoughts. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK says, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
it's the question is how do you define acknowledge, right, in your own understanding and in the others. I mean, I would say you recognize maybe there is an enemy, and then you deal with it in the best way. So, and you just, of course, you hope you don't have any enemy at all, especially as an
Yeah.
artist. You want to be loved by the world. That's the
Yeah.
goal.
That's the first step. Don't even have enemies. I like it. That's what some young kid taught me once. He said he learned in judo that the best fighter is the one that doesn't fight the fight.
Great.
That you don't even go there, but the environment is set up like that. So James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, "This is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?" Years later, Faulkner said, "Sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism." Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Yeah, that's what we discussed a little earlier, right? So I think the artist puts it out there or shows the truth. And because we don't see it out there, we look at a tree, but a million people look at sunsets, but I don't think they really see them anymore. They look at them through their phones or at the moment, but so maybe when they're in the theater and there's a sunset being shown, they have a different reaction and maybe they understand the idea of the sunset back in the theater. It's kind of sad, but maybe it's part of the artist's mission also, as you said, to expose the truth.
That's amazing. Yeah, it reminds me of the McLuhan line. There's no such thing as a good or a bad movie. It's a good or bad viewing experience.
Yes,
Because we can go see horrible movies, but have a great time.
absolutely.
You know. So, what first attracted you, Benny, to pursuing the violin, specifically that instrument, and where are your tipping point? Just sort of walk us through it. Are your parents playing music around the house live or recorded, and they're telling you to take an instrument, or what sort of made you gravitate towards playing music as a career?
So so let's start with the music system in Germany, right, which is a little bit different than in the USA. So we every school pretty much had a little orchestra, their music classes, art classes. So so they try not to cut those classes if there's trouble, like they did in many schools here in the States, right? It's not as bad nowadays, but maybe 20 years ago they were cutting art programs costly. So when I went to school, there's music classes and they give you options when you're young. They're like, oh, you know what, you should learn the recorder or something. So at the age of 5 or 6, everybody's kind of thinking, hey, what does my kid's gonna play? And my mother said, everybody learns piano. I don't like that. So she said, why don't you try the violin? I didn't even know. I didn't have a say. I was like, hey, that sounds interesting. Why not? So we met a teacher, and for some reason I showed some potential. And after a couple of years, I've been scrubbing away and playing in public, and so that's why I stuck to the violin.
And so, yeah, that's interesting how you sort of fell into it. And then how were you developing, a sense of taste? So I'll set it up like this. My friend said the three tenets of music are technique, theory, and taste.
Mhm.
So, technique, after many years, you've learned how to play the notes. Theory is what are you doing? How does one acquire taste?
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, this comes back. You mentioned if parents play music, it's like even the Mozart effect. People play Mozart to some bellies of, pregnant women to make this a smarter kid. So my parents were both actors. So I mean, creative people. My dad loved Chopin. He would play records late night after coming home, right? So I mean, music was around, but they didn't play music, but it was in the house. Um, and I just, yeah, you fall into it, I guess. As you said, technique we can learn. The theory is part of that, and you just develop taste, I guess. Or you see musicians, and my mom took me to the opera when I was like 6, 7. We saw Hansel and Gretel, right, with a flying witch on the stage, flying out of the house. All that impressed. So everything, I took everything in, and I guess I was kind of curious, Aquarius type, and I just acquired that, right? So my teachers didn't have to work that part. Sometimes you watch students and you can see they're great from a technical point, but then they don't really know what they're playing. And so for some reason I never had issues with that. I was always, as we call it, musical musician, so I had a good time playing. I seemed to understand the music. I don't know, it just it came very natural to me.
It's beautiful. And like just gravitating are those three violin teachers you spoke about all teaching you classical orchestral violin playing? Or are they also saying, hey, there's swing music, there's avant garde jazz, there's rock and roll? Are any of them directing you towards that? Or is that what you hung out with your peer groups, your teenage friends, and they're playing this? How did you acquire like a taste for playing swing music? Because you play like in a band that does like Django Reinhardt music, right?
Right, correct. And yeah, when I grew up back in the 70s and 80s, there wasn't hardly any alternative styles, as we call them. So everything, my first teacher, pretty classical. Clean up your technique, do the Mozart, do the Beethoven. Uh, but there was nothing about Frank Zappa or Stefan Grappelli. I mean, I saw Grappelli in the early 80s because my mom took me to a concert and said, I heard this guy and he plays like in a Hawaiian shirt and he's amazing and he plays different style. And I was hooked when I saw him. Somebody had fun on the violin, not just playing Tchaikovsky and sweating it. So I just pretty much, I discovered people. My friends had a rock band in school and I said, we play the Santana song. Can you play the violin melody? I'm like, I don't know, play to me, right? So yeah, in school, my teachers were pretty classical, focused on that, but open-minded. I mean, I could ask them questions about something and bring a record over, but in general, we did classical, technique. But my peers, discovering stuff on the radio or on TV, you see a band, right, at a late night show back in Germany, then you say, wow, what's going on there? But yeah, violin back in those days was pretty much still bound to classical music, right?
Yeah, because it's interesting you brought up Frank Zappa, but before we go into that a little, when you said Santana, did you end up playing with them the riff?
Oh yeah, we did. I forgot. Was it Black Magic Woman? One of those numbers.
Yeah.
I forgot. But yeah. And there's a big mess. Yeah, I learned this for like a garden party. Down at the river, we had some barbecuing, and we had a rehearsal, and I brought the violin, and I learned this from the record. Wasn't even notated, right? And I'm such a guy. Everything is written, right? Very classical. Show me the sheet music, I can play it. Yeah, that was my first exposure. Maybe I was 15, 16. And at the same time, I got a Louis Armstrong record, and then I heard a Tango Piazzolla piece, heard those violinists play, and then I discovered, Jean-Luc Ponty. But again, they were very virtuosic and also a different style I didn't quite get yet. I loved the music, but I wasn't ready yet to play that, right? So the rock and roll was an easy way in, just to play some nice melodies a little bit, but I didn't really join a band. I was just a guest artist.
Right. But it was cool you brought up Jean-Luc Ponty because Frank Zappa actually first started using violin as a part of his rock band, not his orchestral stuff, as a rock band with Don Sugarcane Harris, which was really greasy LA, East LA rock and roll, like blues. And then he sort of shifted in that Jean-Luc Ponty plays the music of Frank Zappa is such an amazing album because it got us tuned to this idea of jazz violin. But that goes to the essence of improvisation. So how did you shift? Because often classical orchestral musicians are so tuned to something you already touched on, that is reading notes and playing them and knowing, and shift to that, what is improvisation? I mean, when you saw Stefan Grappelli, how much is he improvising? There's
Everything.
but he's not improvising the melody or the basic structure. But is that where you're getting more open? Like, how did you learn how to improvise?
Yeah, no, this is very interesting. So, when you study classical, you have to play Mozart and Beethoven, right? And so to keep it very short, back in those days, Mozart was a phenomenal improviser. Bach was. He made up stuff on the fly, right? I mean, Mozart could actually write a piece after just thinking about it in his head. But when they played their concerti, like a piano concerto or the violin concerto, there's a segment in the piece, and usually when the orchestra stops and the soloist gets like to shine for like 2 minutes, it's called a cadenza. So back in the day, they would make up stuff based on the concerto. So they would take their themes and just start to rip on them, right? Because later the violinists kind of lost that ability because they started reading all the stuff, and composers started to notate their own ideas about the soloist playing his cadenza. That kind of got forgotten. And when I read about this, I was like 16, 17, and my teacher said, you know what, if you don't like this cadenza from this other violinist who wrote this in 1890, why don't you make up your own cadenza? And you can play this at the recital. And I said, okay. So I started actually charting down my own ideas to a Mozart concerto based on that concerto, right? So that was my first classical improvisation. I mean, nothing jazz, but within classical, right? And then later I started to develop that more. And the jazz came actually way later. I wasn't even ready yet for that. So I just started actually on the violin to make up little segments for certain pieces when there was a moment I could have some improv moments. Does it make sense?
Matt, Benny, that was so good, because it begs this question: is your peers in the classical music world, how many of them got that opportunity to learn to improvise? Is that a rarity in your case?
It's rare. There are a couple. That's also inspired me. There are a couple of violinists like Gideon Kramer and some other ones who actually had the same thinking and actually either commissioned other cadenzas or made up their own. But it's not that many. It's like a handful of violinists, because again, you need to be open also, and you need to learn to improvise, right? Some people are scared, right? It's like jumping off a cliff, right? You don't know where you're going to go. And classical musicians like that it's all there, and they just deliver and they make amazing music. And it's hard enough to play what's on the paper, right? Don't get me wrong. I mean, the composers put all their heart and knowledge into the music, and you want to deliver that as an artist. So, and then on top of that, to improvise is another level. So they're only a handful, and it's gotten better. I mean, it's gotten better over the years. I mean, back in the 80s, there were like maybe 2 people doing that. And then, of course, the classical world looks at them like, what are you guys doing? We love this other piece that we've heard for like 50 years now. Why are you making up your own segment there, right? So, actually, it wasn't easy for those players also to play it in public, because classical audiences are very opinionated.
Yeah.
Right? Tradition is a big word, and we don't like this the way you do it. And it's very hard for young people or other artists like Gideon Kramer when they came in, or now Patricia Kapuscinskaya and those people who come in and say, wait a minute, I'm going to show you something else with what we can do here with this piece, right? So it's a little battle uphill.
It's amazing, because you brought up Astor Piazzolla, and I've shown movies about him and studied him. He changed the music of his country,
Yeah.
and the people would beat him up on the street for doing that. That'd be like, Chuck Berry changing blues to rock and roll, and they go, we're going to beat you up. Well, they did beat up Miles Davis and stuff, but it's a different thing, beating up Astor Piazzolla. Then years later, they realized, hey, wait, we can sell his picture on coffee mugs to tourists. We love Astor Piazzolla.
I know. And it's all about, again, learning. Same happened to Jobim, by the way. The bossa nova is a completely different bossa than the earlier Brazilian music, which is also amazing. And same if you listen to Carlos Gardel and the old tango, which is very melodic and old school, and they're beautiful. I love the old tangos. They're phenomenal. And I can see while Gardel came in and said, you know what, I want to spice this up. I want to make this rock and roll tango style, right? But I can see the people being like, whoa, this is too much. It's all overhead. We can't handle that.
But let's take two sort of, I don't know the world of violins in the classical world, or whatever you want to call that. I don't like to call it classical, orchestral. I guess you call it classical, right? Like Joshua Bell or Yo-Yo Ma, string players. How much are they, when you go to one of their concerts, how much percentage are they improvising from playing traditional written pieces? 80%, 60, 20? What's your guess?
No, actually, it's pretty much zero. They're not improvising, but
Wow.
they're interpreting.
Or
So, I mean, I would say they play 90% was on the page, but those 10% is the magic that makes them your Joshua Bell or Yo-Yo Ma or Perlman, right? This is why I want to
yeah,
see them. So they're not just reading down the notes, they're going to add their personality, but they're not changing everything up and down because they feel like
yeah.
it. No, no, no. They're very true to the subject matter, to the piece.
That
But
that
they're
is
adding this, whatever, I would say interpretation is here the magic word.
beautiful. Because that's why you've worked for my wife Susie Williams, and I say she's the best interpreter of Bessie Smith in the world, and even the guy who wrote the book on it. But it's like I like the word rooted, not
Mm-hmm.
retro, because we know there's these people who can just do it like it was, but you adding that personality. I like those words, but it's telling me 90% on the page is very important for
Yeah.
me to understand that. So you taught me how you learned how to improvise and how you gravitated towards these other musics a little. Then what was the tipping point when you said I want to score films, or TV shows? When you because that's part of what you do, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's your email. Your email name is, but you
Right.
do a lot more than that. I mean, you can tell me the percentage there. How much are you a live performer and how much are you a composer for, is it 50-50 world or
It always shifts by projects, right? So if I'm not working on a commission or a movie, then I play more. I have more time to take engagements, right? And
no?
the other way around. But
Yeah.
in my brain, it's kind of now 50-50. I like writing. So I'm also a composer. So as I said, I started to improvise to write it down. Soon after that, people asked me, can you write something for me or can you write a duo? So I started writing trios, chamber music, right? And things like that. Soon I discovered, I went back in the 70s, there was a tiny movie got really big called Star Wars, right? And I was one of the kids, of course, who was in line in Germany in 1976, and I saw it in big theater the first time. And here is the score, which is, of course, now the very famous John Williams music, which is all classical. This is not a science fiction score with synthesizers and weird sound. This is a traditionally, set score, which is done for big symphony, and it's amazing. And as you know, it set the landmark. The standard for this, and it's just mind blowing. So I'm like a teenager, and I'm coming from the classical world, Tchaikovsky, Dvorak, all that, and I'm in the movie theater. I'm like, wait a minute, there's a guy writing classical music, kinda for a sci-fi movie. So I started to research. And I discovered Korngold, I discovered Franz Waxman, I discovered the old golden age of film scoring in Hollywood. I discovered Henry Mancini, Michel Legrand, Jerry Goldsmith, all the others. And I thought, that's a different medium. What's going on here with film? And all of a sudden, once you are turned on, I watched television with a different mindset because all of a sudden I watched the movie and I noticed the composer, right? It's like people who maybe watch costumes all of a sudden, and that's all they see. Then they don't even see the movie anymore. They just look at the costumes because they maybe want to make their own costume. I don't. So I started to really pay more attention behind the scenes, and soon I said, you know what? One day I want to write some music for a movie. Took a couple of years before that happened, but that was like even way back home, and I was so mesmerized by this marriage of sound and picture. Opera is a step before that, we know, but it's not, a picture, but it's music to action. That's opera, right? And it's similar to that, same idea. But I was just hooked by the idea of film scoring. And then 20 years
That
later, I
is
come to the
amazing.
States and I started actually getting into that.
That is amazing. And just tell me, you named all the bigs, but you didn't make. How do you regard Bernard Herrmann in there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if I have a big list, of course, Björn, he was so innovative, right? I mean, it's like Korngold was in his old day, and Waxman was, and Herman, similar to Piazzolla, right? Said, you know what? I don't want to do those old harmonies anymore. I don't want to do what Miklos Rocha did for Ben Hur. I'm gonna show you something different. So he kind of cleaned up the scene, but not everybody liked it either. I think it's genius, right? But again, it's so personal. And Bernard Herrmann scores, you know him in a minute. In a second, they come on screen. You know, wow, I know this color. I know what he's doing. And yeah, and amazing how it worked together for the picture, right?
Yeah. Geez, we should do a whole salon just on scoring, but I'm glad it came up because you said the word harmony there. And that's one of my music questions indeed is Coppola breaks it down into music into four elements, melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color.
Mhm.
How do you explain to the lay person what is tone color?
It's pretty much it's actually the instruments you're going to use. I think it's part of orchestration. For me, that's tone color. So there's a big difference if you hear Gone with the Wind played by a bassoon or by an electric guitar. It will
Yeah.
create a completely emotion, even if it's the same music. So it might be a turn off all of a sudden if you hear it with that, or it might be like, wow. So tone color that's what makes it magic when people rediscover songs being rearranged, or all of a sudden they become hits even after the fact, right? They are old tunes that never made it big, but then in 20 years later, somebody came in and said, you know what, I'm going to add some strings to that. I'm going to make this a doo-wop song. And before you knew it, that song became a hit because it resonated because of tone color, right? Arrangement, orchestration.
Yeah. Benny, let's go we're going to go back into film scoring and assignments, but let's ask this question in this regard. A screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. So
Mhm.
great art, great music. Kubrick says great art, great music is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process when you're composing a piece of music, not for a film, just you're composing a Benny piece? What role does intention play?
I think it's very important because, again, I want to tell the truth or show something to the world, right? Of my understanding of something. So for me, intention, and maybe it's my German side, I'm planning out stuff. I mean, there's intuition. Sometimes I'm surprised by my own decisions, but in general, intention is, I think, all important, for your piece, where you want to go with it, what you want to do. It might take you somewhere else, but at the beginning, I'm pretty big on that.
And Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. When you're composing a piece, not for a film, just a Benny composition, how much are you thinking of your audience?
I try not to think of the audience because I might make compromises, or that's when I do commercial work, it's different. If I just write my own personal piece, I think there should be no compromises. It should be me, right? So I
Yeah.
just need to do it. If I start wondering about if they're gonna like it, it's in a way it's over.
Yeah.
That's a different field. Then I need to really shift and say, okay, let's write a piece everybody likes, and maybe you fail then too. That might backfire too. I
Yeah.
think you want to just stay true to yourself and ignore that, right? I think Yehudi Menuhin once said to a student, however you play, half of the audience is not going to like it. So you get over it. No matter how
Wow.
you do it in the theater, 50% is not going to like your performance. It's just a fact. Don't take it
Get
personal.
over it. That is great. In fact, I have this formula. If half the people love it and half the people hate it, you're doing something right. If everybody loves it or everybody hates it, you're in trouble.
There's something to that too, right?
Yeah.
There's
But
something
not
to that.
necessarily because
No.
there's some universality to
Hmm.
music. Why does some music, no matter what machines behind it
Yeah.
promoting it, rises in many
Hmm.
people?
Yeah.
It's usually the machine that's getting it. Well, Stravinsky says it really well. Most people don't know what they like what they know.
Hmm. Sure. Yeah.
So, kids don't hear Billie Holiday. If they did, they might go, wow.
Right.
But there's a funnel of what we're able to hear.
True. But then there's also Beethoven Fifth Symphony, and it's so true that it stick for centuries. And every time somebody new hears it, they're gonna go, wow, and they hear the truth of the masterworks, right? As you said too. So if people hear it, and that's why some other pieces are they get lost, right? They get lost in the stream. But thankfully, when you play live, you can introduce them back to audiences, if it's classical or jazz or whatever piece you're gonna do. But yeah, the exposure is important, because if it's true, if it's genuine, it's gonna speak to people immediately.
But you're saying as a live event or even as a recording?
Recordings, I think, don't have that same impact. They do have an impact, but
Yeah.
it's always better live. I think so. I mean, I love recordings, and I'm glad we have them. I love to listen to Billie Holiday, and I'm sad I never saw her live, right? And many other artists, and I'm blown away. But I would say if I would see her live, it would be even more mind blowing,
Yeah.
right?
Pretty amazing. When I show jazz films every year with Mark Canner, people clap after each. If you play a record for people in your living room, they don't clap after you play it, but they clap like the person's up there on the screen. But the flip is our dear friend Brad Kay, who's collected every medium to record music. One day I said to him, Brad, did recording music ruin music? And he goes, yeah. But he knew what I meant. Ruin meant it changed it from a sacred live event to, oh, it's just because, you go over to Brad's and you start talking when he's playing your record, he'll yell at you. And it's hard. He wants you to be present and listen to every second of this record like it's being live.
Yes. And you know how much sheet music in the old days sold too? Because people would hear something of a singer and they would get the piano sheet music, and their kids and their families would play it at home, right? Same with classical music. They would hear symphony and they would get the edition to recreate it at the home and do it. And we have lost a little bit of that, of course. On the other side, there's now a stream and abundance of stuff you can discover, but you need some guidance too. There's so much out there.
Yeah. But this is funny because this jazz critic, Ben Ratliff, wrote, I mean sound as it has long functioned among jazz players as a mystical term of art, as in every musician finally needs a sound, a full and sensible embodiment of their artistic personality, such that it can be heard at best in a single note.
Nice.
So before it's pretty well put what he said. Now, before I tell you what he says, the adjective for Miles, Coleman Hawkins, and Coltrane, what if a jazz or music writer you really respected said Benny's sound is, what two adjectives would you feel they got it, and you would accurate and honored that they would say? Benny's sound is, in a couple words.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say precise, which is a weird word for music, but that's part of, that's maybe the technical aspect of it. So, precise, deep. I think that's maybe the emotional segment here. And profound would be great, but I don't know. Kenna solo, yeah, profound might be good. I like that.
I love that. Those three were beautiful. So here's what Ben said. Miles Davis was fragile and pointed. Coleman Hawkins was ripe, mellow, and generous. And Coltrane was large, dry, lightly cooked, and urgent.
Nice. Yes.
What amazing adjectives. Yeah. So tell me an instrumental that makes you laugh.
Instrumental music. Let me see. That makes me laugh. Um, uh, I try to see which genre I'm gonna pick, because there's so many humor. I mean, there's pieces. They all make me smile. Good music makes me smile too, not just cry. Right? Laughing is something in addition. Um, I would say, I mean, because you need to really push that to laugh when I sit in the theater. So I try to imagine myself when I sat there. What did I hear that I would actually laugh? Usually you laugh about somebody playing something cool, right? In jazz would be the great solo, and you like, wow, you laugh there. Classically, that's harder. If I maybe a Mozart, Beethoven, or minuet or something from a symphony, I don't recall, right? Something that is just so delightful that you just sit there. But don't forget, you're not allowed to laugh in a classical concert, right? It's like a funeral. So maybe that's why we don't laugh, and because I would love to, right? I would love to. When I sit in the Disney Hall, I'm like, this was an amazing performance. You wanna yell out like the Italians do at the opera, like yay! But everybody's gonna shush you, like next movement, be quiet. So I say composers have a lot of humor in it, and Stravinsky, there are moments in the Rite of Springs you can just laugh or you think,
Yeah.
wow, right? But yeah, so there's a lot of different pieces. Nothing
Well,
particular.
that was well put, Benny. It was like PDQ Bach or one of those guys playing classical
Yes,
music, or
yes.
Victor Hugh. But I asked because I don't know how much, if ever, you've written lyrics. Because here's an interesting McLuhan line, which he's talking about song, and I think he's implying lyrical. But you can react as you will. McLuhan says song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical tastes is ultimately connected to language difference.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, there must be. I'm sure there's a connection because you travel around the world, and I've been very fortunate to be in different places on this planet, and there's different patterns, right? And listen to Italian opera. See, when Mozart writes that in Italian, everything is faster. Musically, it's faster. Once he wrote a German opera, you got to slow it down a little bit because of the language, right? The French that also flows differently. So definitely, I think there is. It has to do with that, right? Language is key.
Yeah. It's interesting because, Duke Ellington hung out with McLuhan, and he quoted him on one of his albums. And, you know, I mean, but I'm curious, do you write lyrics also?
I tried, but in German, I've done some fun birthday songs, like Leonard Bernstein did those for friends, right? Some funny rhymes. I'm good at that kind of stuff. I'm nothing really serious, and then I feel like, it's not deep or profound enough. And my English, I'm still working on it. I bought a book of 6,000 words I might use or find useful. I haven't even read that book yet about those.
That's good. At least you have it on the shelf. That's the important thing, is you just see the binding on your shelf. That's what
Yeah,
I
but I
think
like to
books.
work together. So I admire Cole Porter, who wrote his own lyrics, and they're amazing. But then look at Gershwin or Irving Berlin and Jerome Kern or Schubert. They picked some great poets, right? Schubert didn't write a single word, but he picked some
Yeah.
amazing German poets to
Oh
put his
yeah.
music to. So
And so Thelonious Monk said there's no wrong notes. Any comment?
well, again, depends on the genre, right? And if it's written on paper, and if you play a wrong note, it's kind of wrong, right? Depends where you stand at. But of course, in the world of jazz, you can all sell anything. You can just, if you sell it to the people, you make it profound, deep, and true. Even that wrong note, from a theoretical point of view, might be the right note, right? But yeah, if you start the Mozart Symphony on the wrong note, everybody's gonna look, and then there will be questions asked. So.
That was well put. We asked Hadda Brooks, the great. She was actually a classically trained pianist here in LA, and she was Gene Kelly's and Fred Astaire's rehearsal pianist. She was
Cool.
black.
Wow.
And we said, can you comment on this question? Thelonious Monk says, there are no wrong notes? She goes, nope, there's wrong notes. It's just how good you cover them up.
That was a very good answer. That's true. Yes.
But what you talked about reminds me of Ruth Draper saying, the key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they who must give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. Now, you've
Mhm.
performed in great venues with lots of people. How do you accomplish that? How do you, how do you bring the audience up onto the stage? And how do they give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power? How does that
That's
happen?
yeah. I don't even know really how it happens, but it does happen because there's an energy. I mean, we know it from people in a room when somebody speaks and somebody walks into a room and everybody's turning heads, right? So there's an energy. So the same applies to concerts or to music. So we can feel it, what comes back, even if they're silent. This could be an audience that doesn't even cheer and clap, but what they did, the warmth, the love for the band, for the artist, comes across. So you feel that. But of course, when you play, you're in your zone. The best concerts you ever play is you don't know a single thing what happened. You are actually really, you're gone. You're playing. If I start looking at people while I play, I do something wrong way. For me, I need to. Once you're in, you are on that different in that alpha state, whatever you call that, right?
Yeah.
And that comes across to the audience. They see that, and then they feed their love back to you. It's just vibes. I don't, I mean, the cheering that's audiovisual, you know, sensory response. You feel later and you love it, but at the moment, there's just something that goes both ways. It just flows.
But when you started playing your 5 or 6, are you getting that already and then it took you years to develop it? Or how did you develop that sense of getting in that zone?
Uh, Interesting is, and you can read about this in the Yehudi Menuhin biography, because he was a prodigy, right? Playing with 6 years old with big famous people, and everything he did was by intuition. He never questions anything. And when he turned into a teenager, all of a sudden, his brain woke up and he said, "How did I do this?" And then for a bunch of years, he was in a deep depression because he questioned every single thing: a bow move, a hand move, you know. So when you are young, mostly you just do it, and you can watch those little kids playing violin. They're not even there. They look like they're, obsessed by someone else playing the instrument, right? They're like 5 years old or 6, and you look at them, it's like, whoa, is this a 6-year-old girl playing violin? Is this Midori? No, no, no. This is actually maybe a reincarnation. What do I know? So, but there will be the moment when you wake up, when your consciousness comes in. And then you need to work on this a little bit, and you just need to meditate and get into the music and don't be distracted, things like that. But I think as a kid, the first years when I played, I didn't notice anything. I just was in my zone. I came on stage, boom, right? Nothing intimidated me. I didn't, yeah, it was all good.
Wow. Benny, how much, again, it's a stupid question. I know it's both, but how much do you think, when it boils down to it, is the DNA you got from your parents and on your own were were you able to develop being such a virtuoso? I mean, literally, is it little slight uh or is it a big, what
Um, Yeah, I'm not the expert on DNA, right? I wish I could meet those people who can tell me all of that. But I say there is something, of course, from your parents that came in, right? I mean, certain things are, that's why you have a DNA. That's how you look like your dad or your mom, and stuff happens. I'm sure it's on all levels. But you develop a lot. As we said, people turn evil because of influences, right? Or
yeah,
turn great. So, no, yeah, I mean, you do a lot of work yourself, and you have to. It's also, I mean, there's a gift, but if you don't honor that gift, it's going to disappear. And I
right.
meet a lot of people who tell me, I can't sing. I'm horrible at singing. I said, you know what? When you were 5 years old or 2, I'm sure you sang beautifully, but then you never cultivated it again and it disappeared. And then people would just not invite you to sing again because you never, I think there's stuff you can develop and you can foster and you can bring it up, and musicians do that while we practice hours, right, of our instruments and writing, and writers do and painters do. If you don't paint, nothing develops, right? I mean, you got to do it.
But
So
dude, you're so good. Do you still practice daily?
I should, but I always think of Pablo Casals, the great cellist, when he was asked at like age 85 why he still practices, and he says, "Yeah, I'm feeling I make a tiny bit of progress." And you know what? There's something so beautiful about that, because we always, first of all, you decline. Our muscles get, when you get older, everything slows down. So you need to keep up. That's what my teacher told me already. You need to keep up. Just to keep your standard means practicing a couple hours. But then if you want to get better, you need to add on top of that. But so now to answer your question, I try a little bit of, and I have a shelf here of scores. I love printed paper scores, right? I mean, digital is beautiful in its own right, but I love to have a physical copy of a score. So I have repertoire. I want to play Shostakovich, this, Bartok, this. Stuff is piling up. So I have a full music stand of like 25 pieces. So every day, at least for like half an hour, I want to do
That's
something.
good. Half an hour. Wow.
Sometimes I don't make it, but then I feel sad. But I feel always good. It's like therapy. Every time I play, and after an hour later, I feel actually good. So it does
Yeah,
something.
beautiful. So McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness, like knife and fork extends our teeth.
Mhm.
The projector, shutter extends our eyelid. Like maybe religion, even non-physical, like religion or philosophy extends consciousness.
Mhm.
He calls it human sensorium, but I like to say humanness. What does the violin extend for you? What humanness?
Um, it's I think it's emotion, right? That's
Wow,
that's
that's
my
good.
humanness here. That's why the violin is closest to the voice, to the singer, and many other instruments too. But yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, all about humanity is in there.
Yeah. I spoke with Michael Apted, the filmmaker, years ago, 40 years ago, actually, and said, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? He says, well, we've learned to take in information faster. And I said, most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922 in France, but in the 80s, it really flourished because of MTV. Marty Scorsese says, I cut my films faster because of MTV. Can we literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
I think we do learn it, and I see it. I mean, things to even to understand all the technical stuff we have offered nowadays, and we have to deal with. You got to learn faster, and you can see it with the kids. And I can look at my mother, who's good with certain things, but then you look at a 10-year-old with a tablet, how he's handling or she's handling things, right? So I'm sure we can adapt, and I don't know if it's for the better, but we definitely speed things up a little bit here too.
And really, the hidden question is, can humans literally multitask?
No. And I tell you why. I don't think no. We think we can, but what you do is you jump between different areas you do. And the best example is when people tell me when I watch a movie and it's about film music, right? That brings us back. They If you watch the movie with a great dialogue, you don't hear the music anymore. It might
No.
be there, but it's supporting, it's emotionally there. But if you listen to the music, you won't hear the dialogue anymore, right? I can play a Beethoven symphony on the record player and read your book, and you tell me what you heard, the Beethoven or the book reading. You can maybe go forth and back very fast, and you think you
Yeah.
do it, but in true reality, but we can switch very fast. This is amazing. I think
Yeah.
that's our genius here, that you can do those, you can jump around like this quantum, right? Quantum leaps.
Yeah. Benny, you are a smart person. I'm really honored we're doing this. What's your hunch or intuition is the motive of the cave artist?
So how did you find cave artists?
Well, no, how did I define it or find?
No, so the cave artist, is that the word I understood properly?
Yeah, cave art, and it's funny because I'm going to expand it. It's like we never really heard cave music because you could see that movie by Herzog on cave art, and they have a little flute that these cave artists might.
Oh, I see. Okay, I was thinking about an artist who is in his own cave and doesn't
Yeah,
really go into the world, right?
yeah,
But now are you talking about the old ancient?
old cave artists, and it's interesting.
Oh, okay.
We don't have documents of cave music or cave dance, but we
No.
do. For some reason, we have this medium that could last for many, many years, cave art. So it's like, what? Why do you think they did cave art? Just your hunch.
okay, so music came way later anyway, right, in the development. So, but let's say if you are out there and you want to express yourself, you know, you want to show people something. That's why maybe you put it on a wall, right? Where else can
Yeah.
you put it, right? I mean, there's not too many places back then. You know, there's no canvas. You can put it at the tree. Will be, I don't know. Yeah, the cave seemed to be the only place you can scribble
Yeah.
something on to show your neighbor or your cave, your fellow cave friend that something cool you saw, or you want the sunset from outside to be back in your cave when you go to bed. I don't know, right? Maybe it's
Yeah.
a desire to express yourself or
I
take
like
something
that.
with you.
No, I like that because it fits perfect in the next question. Two of my film heroes, one of them, George Manupelli, his mantra is ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas says there is no self expression. And the great jazz pianist Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. So, again, it's a sort of stupid question just to get the discussion is art making, music making more self expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever technology, culture, or environments are dominant?
I think it's both, right?
Yeah.
Because it gets filtered through you. I mean, so that is self-expression. And but then you take everything in, right? You're a human being. So you can,
Yeah.
if you shut yourself out, maybe that's an experiment to have a composer on an island without any, see what kind of music he would write. Just, but then it might be
Amazing.
island music. What do I know, right?
It's amazing because they asked Ginger Baker, the drummer for Cream, where'd you get your sound? And he said, I was in London when they were bombing us. So it was like
Wow.
boom, 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 boom. You know, that's what
Wow.
created his sound. And then Missy Elliott, the rap singer, said she learned how to sing from car alarms going off.
Great. Great. Absolutely.
But the real hidden question here is, can art making be egoless?
Mm. How would it look like? How would it sound like? I don't think so. I think that's why we are so personal, right? That's why people become artists, right? Otherwise, I mean, boys would say everybody can do it, right? But no, but not everybody does, right?
Yeah,
Not everybody puts a bathtub into the corner at a museum with some butter and some oil, right? I mean, it takes the artist to do
yeah.
something spectacular, right? So I think
I
ego
like
is
that
part of it.
piece. I like that piece of art. Is perception reality?
Yes, but there's also a perception box you build around yourself, right? Clouding that reality a little bit. So, but of course, it is part of that, you know. I think but you assemble a lot. We have a lot of imagination, and we can do a lot of damage to that.
Benny, in general, what's more important, conviction or compromise?
Ooh. You know, my teacher used to say, once in a while, you got to make the fist in your pocket. And
Wow.
that is like when you try to find, you need to evaluate the situation, and if it's worth now to step out and boom, or need to say, you know what, compromise, right? I think both again is important, but you need to really look at what you're after, what's important versus what are we doing here, what I'm doing.
Beautiful. What a wise thing. Meaning, make your fist in your pocket. Like, well, that's actually a good lead to this question. Anger can be a productive emotion when fill in the blank.
um, when the output is positive, or the outcome of the anger.
Yeah. Yeah, because I love that metaphor. You're like you're mad, but you don't have to show it. That's
Yeah.
you know what I say is like when you're pissed at somebody or you got, don't write it in an email and send it.
Mhm.
Write the email, but don't send it.
Yes.
Just go through the act. You don't need to do that. You know, it's
That's exactly what my teacher also said, that that's something you need to understand, especially when you're a teenager and a lot of rage, and you know, so, you know, and you want
yeah.
to just hit him. It's like, wait a minute, right? So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Make the fist in your pocket. That is so good. So simple too, you know.
Right. Not all the time, right? There are moments you got to take them
Right,
out,
right.
but again, you need to evaluate and for the right moment, for the right thing.
Benny, you've accomplished a lot. How do you rate these three elements? Luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role, second and third?
Yeah, this all depends where you want to, how you see yourself in, career. And I think ambition is super important, right, for your personal development, right, and skill. But then luck is crucial for actually your success, because a lot of things happen because of luck, and that's something you cannot foresee and you don't know, but you need to have the other two ready if luck comes and gives you that opportunity, right? So
It's good. The golfer Gary Player says, the more you practice, the luckier you get.
wow, good one, love it.
That's good, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
T.S. Eliot, the poet, says, poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Yeah, that is of course, I was for like 25 years German, right? And then I moved over here, so it became English, and I started dreaming in English, which was first was all messed up. Now it's mostly English, interestingly, and occasionally I jump back to German, right? So it's bilingual, I guess.
But I'm saying even deeper, what form is your inner consciousness in?
Ooh, I don't even know. That's something I need to. Okay, I can't really say.
That's fun. That's actually one of my favorite answers. Like about a year ago, a woman said, I wish I knew.
Yeah, right. Yeah, wow. Good question. I'm gonna think about that then the rest of the afternoon.
Lewis Carroll says, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Impossible things that might happen. Is that,
Yeah, you
or
can.
okay? Could do it any. Okay. Um, I don't think so. I'm not that specific. Not like writing a list or waking up before.
Yeah.
That's my daily list of impossible things. No.
And then in the many decades you've been playing music, tell me one major element that's changed and one major element that stayed the same.
Um, well, the business, the format has changed in music. I mean, we all have seen that dramatically. That's something you cannot ignore, and that's like, who would have thought that CD is already out of the door? And that's something that was big when I grew up, right? Just came around the corner, getting away from vinyl, and now that's gone. So that one has completely changed. The entire model is out, but I think thankfully people who want to make music or be artists, that has not changed. So there's still plenty of people out there, right? That desire to create is still there. So it's
Yeah.
great.
Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you've turned into a strength.
Good point. Maybe it's tough to say. Maybe would be because first I have to analyze myself quickly about some weaknesses that might so I don't let's say weakness. Let's say disappointment. That's a good one because that's I don't know if it's a weakness, but it can be. It can really hold you back, right? Because
Yeah.
you get as an artist so much rejection in writing on the phone in your life. What do I know, right? Beside the beautiful stuff that happens, but so there's rejection, and then with that comes the disappointment or the anger, and then you want to turn that around and say, wait a minute, I can do it. Right? So instead of shutting down and go back into your cave.
Benny, that's so well put because that's the main thing we learned from studying McLuhan and Joyce is how to turn a breakdown into a breakthrough or turn a rejection into a redirection.
Mm-hmm.
That's the human condition. We fall and we get back up. We fall and get back up.
Right.
So we got about 15 more minutes, man. This has been super fun. I
Oh,
appreciate
great fun. I love that. Yes. And I love your backdrop too. I love the dice. And their dice are pretty high. They are not 2 6, but like a 6 and a 5. So that's very
That's
good.
it, a 6 and a 5. And that little clown picture is a Susie original. She painted
Fabulous.
it. Nobody ever comments on that's the first time in 2.5 years. Really good, Benny.
Well,
You're
you could
getting-
have changed them to like 2 1s, right? And have a subliminal message, but maybe the 6 and the 5, 11. I don't know. See, here's something going on.
Well, the other one I love is this Duchamp. It's a hat rack, and then it's the shadow of the hat rack.
Great.
So, yeah, I mean that's amazing. So thanks for being observant. It's beautiful. On what occasion do you lie?
Well, I try not to lie, right? I mean, that's the number one goal. Also, be honest, be true to yourself, to the others, respectful. So you try not to, right? I mean, something in Germany we have is called Notlüge, which means you lie that because of despair, and you have no choice, So somebody maybe comes with a knife and say, "Do you like me?" And if you don't say, you say, I don't like you, he's going to kill you. So you say, "Oh, I do like you," but it's a lie because you don't really like the person, right? That would be a lie out of necessity, right? Notlüge.
Wow. That was really good. One of the greatest popular violinists ever, Jack Benny.
Sure.
You know his joke. The guy comes up to him with a gun and says, "Your money or your life?" And he goes, "Let me think about that." We should do a skit like the German Jack Benny.
Yes.
That was really good. So there's this line that goes, "You create what you resist," or Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, said, "You are what you hate." Mm-hmm. James Joyce said, "Hey, it's a curious thing. Your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve." And Louis Buñuel said, "Thank God I'm an atheist." So it's like, how do you react to this idea? I'm not saying you, Benny, but one creates what one resists. You create what you resist. Any thoughts on that idea?
There could be truth to that. It's like, opposites attract, there's something also similar to that. And maybe something deep down bugs you that much that you don't even know about it, right? Subconsciousness, right? We need Freud here maybe to discover that one. But maybe there's something there. Could be a trigger. I mean, so many things are triggered we don't even know where they're triggered from, right? So it's definitely possible.
If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Get a real job? No. Old joke, right?
That's a good line. That's like, parents, I tell them this joke sometimes. I said, the kid goes up to the parent, goes, "Are you absolutely sure you won't support me for the rest of my life?" And like people my age will laugh, but younger parents, they don't laugh because kids are like, they're like, no, get a real job. That's good. You mean in regards to being a musician? They're like,
or I might just say, "Hey, look at this. Is this what you want to be in 40 years? Do better, right?
Get a real job." But dude, I mean, you play the Hollywood Bowl with what you call it? That's pretty good. That's
pretty Etta James.
Good job. That's you got to admit that's pretty. I mean, your parents feel you're a success, right?
I mean, it's they love it. My mom always way too nervous to go to concerts and stuff. She would just sit in the back and it's like, hopefully he makes it to the concerto, right? So, but no, they support me. They love it. It's all good. Unfortunately, my dad passed away when I was 2. Car accident in Germany. It was very tragic. So my mom raised me alone.
Wow.
But I know my dad would have been proud too. I hope so.
Well, that's perfect lead in. Can you forget to die?
No. Of course not. I think no. See, I think this is, I mean, of course we're all kind of scared, but on the other side, this is the great mystery, the great ending. in a way, it's something I don't want to die now, but in a way, I don't know how to phrase it. It's almost very exciting that you
Yeah,
die, because
that's
there's something you
beautiful.
don't know yet that's gonna happen, right? That's gonna it's gonna boom. It's gonna come in the Star Trek, right? The unseen, the final frontier, and I'm very excited. But again, of course, I don't want it right now because I have stuff to do and I want to finish before I die. But ultimately, I think it's completely mind blowing.
Beautiful. It's like, it reminds me, just saying that word mystery, the poet Auden said, the mystery of art is that we don't know if it activates us or pacifies us.
Mm.
So both of those can, pacifying, like Brecht said too. He said, I don't want art that pacifies. I want art that, makes you do something. Well, art that puts you in a trance or pacifies can be good too. And it'll eventually activate you. But that was beautiful how you said that, because we don't know what happens to us after we die, but we think, some people think they know, or they say they've come back, but it is your enthusiasm and passion going, that's the great mystery. Like, it's
At
like,
least for me, that's what I say. For
yeah,
me, it's a great mystery, right?
yeah. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
I like over. It's just easier, I guess.
These are 5 quick Alan Watts questions, just off the top of your head, in a few words. Who started it all?
God,
Are we going to make it?
no,
Where do we put it?
in the drawer,
Who's cleaning it up?
nobody.
Is it serious?
Yes.
Wow, very good. Couple more here, Benny, and we're out of here. If a publisher was to release your autobiography, off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Get a real job.
Dude, for a guy who's so successful, as it appears you're successful, it's funny that you can laugh about it, because that's like, musicians, it's all like, have something to fall back on. They want to scent the glue in the binding of your autobiography. What would the smell be?
Um, bread.
Oh, that's good. Is this
Pretzel. I defined it. Pretzels. Bavarian
pretzel?
pretzels.
Oh, I love that smell.
Or
Good
beer,
take.
but beer would be, either beer or pretzels, one of those.
Yeah.
Or both.
Or both, beer and pretzel smell. That's
I've been
good.
to the Sniffing Theater back in the 70s with a card. I've sitten in a
Oh yeah.
performance. I've done it.
I showed John Waters' movie where we gave out these cards.
Love it.
Smellorama.
All right.
If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed, and what would it be made of?
Ocean, titanium.
Nice. Tell me something good you never had, but you never want.
Ferrari.
Good. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Wake up from the dream.
That is good. Well, that's a great lead in. This is a question I've left off for years now. Is the main thing that McLuhan learned from Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce is that artists can also dream awake. That everybody, and it's not to sound elitist, but everybody has this power to create these amazing scenarios in the middle of the night. But artists also do that while they're awake.
Mm-hmm.
Have dreams played a role in your creative process? Like, how do they leak into your sensibility? You get an assignment or you're going to play a gig. Are dreams play a role in your creative process at all?
Oh, they totally do. And everything started, to keep it very short, with the Castaneda books I read when I was 20. And of course, waking yourself up, I mean, all those exercises they would do with, but I didn't do the druggy part. I just tried to do it the German way back then.
Yeah.
But no, dreams were important because sometimes I still wait for the dream writing a symphony and I wake up and I have to write everything down. That hasn't happened, but I've dreamed of playing some melodies and some stuff or some concerts, and then I would actually do a concert. Or I dreamed of myself conducting an orchestra, and then 10 years later I did the first one. I mean, some of them materialized, in one way or another.
And you thought it developed, like if you have a hope that you can suss out in your dream, it may help you manifest it.
You can. I mean, there's a big danger of daydreaming, as we know, right? I mean, if you just do daydream, you don't get other stuff done, right? I mean, so if you just at the beach and you daydream for 20 years, nothing will happen. But then you better get to work once so there's a balance again. But it can help. And Brahms said to a student how to get better. Johannes Brahms said, walk for 5 hours through the forest. Because his student asked him, how do I become a better pianist and composer? And Brahms just said, you know what, take long walks. Isn't that amazing?
That is smart. So he was sort of insinuating, let your mind think, but your body has to do something. But, the daydream line was good because Tim Leary said that if you learn how to lucid dream, which is a form of daydreaming, that when you die, you can direct your path. They say your body dies, but your consciousness or your mind still works for 6 minutes. So if you learn how to direct your daydream, like you sit in the middle of the day and take a nap, and then you sort of try to go to a special hill that you like to dream in, that it's teaching you sort of how to direct your dream. But again, we don't know if that's true. It's called lucid dreaming. But I'm curious what attracted you to the castanata? I mean, you're a kid in Germany. Somebody tells you, or how did you find that?
Yeah, so I guess we were exploring soundtracks and movies and all kind of things. And somebody said, "You're gonna read this book about this Indian and the desert and running at night through the desert and finding himself, waking himself up in the dream. You want to see yourself. I think that's the exercise, right? So you want to actually find, and it happened to me a couple times. And it's actually scary if you wake yourself up inside the dream and start walking around and see yourself again. That almost freaked me out. That happened twice.
That double layer, you mean?
Yes, that double layer. So I just was attracted by this entire thing. I didn't quite understand yet the drug aspect, all this kind of stuff. For the journey, but I started reading those books and I found them fascinating as a journey, as an aspect. And it's like one of those things. Like, wow, I didn't know about if it was true, if this all made up, but also the scenery, the desert, and all those experiences of Castaneda was great.
And it didn't matter. Even if he did make some of it up, they were important books, and they still are important books, just for raising consciousness. So what's the healthiest what's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Oh, I thought the opposite. That just turns me off. So I think there's more that turns me off than it inspires me, unfortunately.
Go ahead.
Because I think I see a certain coldness. As you said, also the speed is technology in a way, how it affects us and how people get sucked into things. That actually is the opposite of inspiring. It's actually throwing us into a different direction, which I don't like.
Wow.
Right.
So that was really good. And I had someone flip it recently too, like that. That's good. They go, I'm not going to tell you the one that inspires you. I'm going to tell you the one. So Thornton Wilder said in 1928, he said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. Benny, you laid your cards on the table for 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this, but what's it really all about for you?
Just to live in the best way, hopefully for everybody, including me.
Right? That's good. I love that. That's Louis Buñuel said, "Long live the living."
Beautiful. We love Buñuel.
We live, but as complex as you are in the sense that you know a lot about music, you're really good articulating an art form that doesn't need words really. Like Stravinsky said, music doesn't mean anything.
Right.
But you have a simplicity about you. I mean, you're yeah, economic. And it's sort of like one question I'll add actually before the last question is I didn't ask is Miles Davis said that the space between notes is important. So I'm really curious. Your website is called Consordino, which means with the mute, which is hilarious because it's almost like the silence, or as Thelonious Monk says, silence is the loudest sound in the universe.
Yeah, can be. And it is.
So, I
People are
mean,
afraid of it.
yeah. So, how did you kind of get to this point where you realize that it's both knowing notes and how to play them, but also having a space between the notes?
That that's intuition. That's your experience. Everything comes together here, right?
Yeah.
It's just a full package, and sometimes you cannot even explain it. You can teach a lot of things, but then I hear it if somebody does it. If I hear your ma, he said the same thing about the space, the between the notes, and you know it in the moment. It's like a club, and I would say if you've been there yourself, you understand it in a even different way. But the general audience, which I call civilians, they feel that something great just happened. They don't know how and why, but they just know something great just happened, right?
It's that they don't have to know
No.
how the theory and technique.
No.
They're-
And
they
we don't
have-
need to explain exactly why, what did, but we might understand it, or, the ones who have been on the same path or similar path, but it's all about, just let it all come in.
Yeah, it's like the dynamics is the word in music.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the dynamics. But I love Billy Wilder said, make the subtleties obvious, which is sort of the opposite of that. It's
Yes.
like, you don't want to make the subtleties obvious, but he's like, well, okay, Benny, last question. Thank you again. This was really fun and enlightening. What gives you the most optimism?
I see animals.
Oh, what a great answer.
If I look at, we have 2 dogs and I see other animals, they maybe that's back to your other question about hope and something that inspires me. If I see the animals, despite all the stuff going on, they keep on moving and to their best, ability and anyway, so that's my closer.
I love that. That was such a great answer. Really been fun. I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, but I hope this never ends. Let's keep on talking, Benny. Thank you for
My pleasure. Thank you, Jerry.
all your wise words and all your great music.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. All right. Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.